Welcome to meeting the HR committee. To remind you that this meeting is being filmed, and under new legislation, members of the public are able to record, film and broadcast from a designated area. Please be aware that the meeting may be recorded and might be filmed and recorded. Moving on to the agenda, first item, apologies.
Thank you, Chair. So we've had apologies from Councillor Scott and also apologies from Councillor Cvetkovic, who's appointed Councillor Drake as substitute.
Is everybody happy we accept those apologies?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, lovely, thank you. Moving on, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest at all to raise? Item 3, report and urgent items. I do not have anything to say other than welcoming you all to this meeting. Do you have anything urgent?
Nothing's straightforward.
Any public questions?
None received, Chair.
Right. So moving on to item 5, minutes. We're asked to confirm the minutes of the Human Resources Committee meetings held on 9th of January 2025 and 25 February 2025, which I think you've all seen. Anybody have any comments or concerns? Are you all happy I should sign those? Good. Thank you. So now moving on to officers' reports. Our first one is an update on staff structure changes, which have recently come into being. So could I ask Carl to start that off, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Can I just check you can all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of nods, fantastic, bro. So this is a verbal update for the committee, which follows on from your last meeting back in February, which you've just taken the minutes for, where you'll note that you agreed a number of changes to the staff structure, which were on different levels. One was quite a shift to 2 new service areas and a realignment of posts. There was a deletion of a couple of posts, and there was an increase in staffing capacity through new roles. So I just wanted to give you an update on how that's going, sort of very high level, and happy to take any kind of questions off the back of that. So the changes were implemented on the 1st of April, which are kind of twofold really. First, it was a movement of individuals to the new service areas. Just as a reminder, the 2 service areas now are the community service and the corporate service. The rationale being that, or how it works, is that majority of resources in terms of staffing sit within the community service, because that's the main outward focusing part of the council. But crucially, it's supported by the corporate service, which is the kind of the engine behind the machine, if you like, to help make things happen. So there was a number of individuals moving over to different service areas, and for some, there was the taking on of new roles themselves. We also started the recruitment to bring in some very talented and experienced new officers. And as ever, we had to be quite creative in the way in which we attracted talent, because recruitment into local government is tricky at the best of times. It's even trickier at the moment, given the complications and the threats of local government reorganisation. So a lot of people are not moving within the sector quite at this point in time. And also it's quite difficult to recruit into Harpenden, actually, in lots of different ways. So we have to be creative, but we've done very well in securing some new talent from outside, and I'll talk to you a bit about that in a moment. So in terms of internal changes, there was a number of people that took on new roles, as I mentioned. So we've got Dan, who's with you now, who's now the head of corporate, looking after that service area. We've got Heather Scott, who's the head of community. We've got Claire Ahmed, who took on a new role around our senior governance and communications officer, working very closely with Dan to lead that service area. We had Tim Mostyn Lomas, who was recruited to the role of Public Realm and Environment Manager, which is not a new role, but one that is very, very important, and reflected the future changes around Phil Wright's potential role when he, at some point in the future, looks to retire. So that's kind of a bit of a transition role. Now, on Tim's role, it's worth saying that was an external recruitment exercise, and Tim was up against some tough competition, but came through that in sort of shining colours, really, and was offered that particular role. And then, as a knock-on effect to that, Alex Melson's role was amended to a senior Green Spaces officer, as opposed to a Green Space officer, and that just reflects some of the changes and additional responsibilities that Alex is taking on as a result of Tim taking his role, and as a result of a slight change to the phasing of the structure changes. So those of you that were on the committee back in February, or have heard me talk about this before, this was a two-phased set of changes. And the reason for that was to try to keep it within a reasonable financial envelope, but also just recognising that we knew down the line there were going to be some levers. And so at that point in time, we will move on to phase two. In terms of external recruitment, we've brought in Madeleine Clark as a community services manager, with a wide range of experience across that role, and she's proven already to be a really, really great appointment. Now, Madeleine actually applied for the role that Tim went for, and this was an example of us being creative, because once we met Maddie, as we call her internally, it was very difficult not to try to secure her into the post. And at that time, the community services manager role was actually a phase two post. And in phase one, we were going to be recruiting to a community development officer and another more junior officer elsewhere. But once we met Maddie, we really wanted to try to secure her. And so we flipped the phasing of that particular part of the new service so that we could get her in. I'm really glad we were able to do that. And we were able to do that within the same sort of financial boundaries that were set previously. We've also been joined by Kirsty Collingwood as a business support officer. So that's working in the corporate team, providing support across the whole council. And again, she's been a brilliant addition to the team. Next week, on the 7th, one of our new town rangers starts, a chap called Andrew Peck. And so we're really, really looking forward to having some additional capacity back into the town ranger team, as we've been a post down for some time. We've also had some long-term absence challenges as well. And then linked to that, we have actually recruited a lady called Claire Bates, who has started a couple of weeks ago on a 6-month contract as a town ranger that will take us through to the end of this calendar year to help cover some of those long-term absences that we're seeing within the town ranger team. So we're really, really delighted with both the internal changes and how that's going, but also the people we've been able to bring in, I think, are really talented, really experienced, and are helping to take the council to the kind of the next level and deliver the business plan in the second half of this 4-year period. So I mentioned phase two. So phase two will happen, but it hasn't got a fixed timeline to it, largely because it relates to a point in time where one of the current officers decides to move on and to retire. So at that point in time, we will then trigger the phase two, which will see the full completion of the recruitment of the other posts that are due to come in at that point. So, Chair, that was my brief run through. So far, so good. We're really pleased with how things are going. The added capacity is enabling us to deliver the things that we need to deliver anyway, as particularly in the Town Ranger service. But it's enabling us really to bring forward a lot of that business plan work that is in the second 2 years of the 4-year plan, that we really generally didn't have the capacity for unless we made some changes. So really happy to take any questions on that at all.
Any questions from anyone? Any comments?
No, it seems very organised and
It seems we've been very lucky, but I think also
hard work.
there's a lot of testament to being flexible and, you know, as you rightly say, Carl, the job market being as it is, very successful. So
I imagine difficult because of the salaries around here with the house prices, what they are and everything. So yeah, well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Chair. That's one of the key challenges for us. I mean, as we know, the majority of people that live in Harpenden don't work in Harpenden. and the majority of people that work in Harpenden don't live in Harpenden. So it's quite difficult to attract talent, and our salary points are competitive, but they're not at the higher end of roles. So we have to really promote the added benefits of working here. You know, it's one of the most flexible workplaces, and it's deliberately designed in that way so that, you know, a big focus on getting things done, but actually recognising people have challenges in lives. And you know, we're a really supportive employer. So yeah, we have to be creative. Salaries is a big challenge. Yeah.
Great. I think very good. You know, and well done to all of those who got, you know, promoted internally like Tim.
Yeah.
I think that is a real strong selling point for the town council, that people can be recognised for what they're doing internally and get promotion.
I heard Heather's been promoted.
Yeah.
Is she still on planning?
She has oversight of that, I think, doesn't she? Yeah.
So she's still mainly she will overrun good, because she's very good.
She is.
Yeah, Heather's still very much looking after the community planning function.
Good.
And I think just that point, Chair, about the internal sort of promotions, it's around about 75% of our current workforce have actually gone through internal promotions since they've been here. And that's a key part of trying to attract people and helping people to grow. So, you know, that's one of the ways in which we've tried to retain people over the years.
Well, I think it's successful. Well done, everyone. Yeah. Anything else anybody wants to add, or?
No.
Anyone? Carl, anything more?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, Darren, you're happy?
Yeah.
Fine. Okay then, can I suggest that we move on to the first of the policies that have come to us for review and approval? So the discipline and grievance policy, which is in your pack. You'll note that we are asked to approve this. Darren, do you have any opening comments or anything you'd like to say?
Not really, Chair, just that all these policies are being reviewed in line with our local council award scheme submission. So there was some policies that were reviewed at CPF and council late last month. It was approved that we'd go forward with the local council award scheme, and these are just some more policies that we're reviewing just in line with that. But obviously,
Okay, I hope you've had a chance to read it. Anybody got any observations or comments or queries, John?
Yeah, very minor ones really. Point 5 on page 8, examples of unsatisfactory work performance, inadequate IT skills. Now, just a sentence there, because that's really a matter of training, isn't it? Rather than that, because unsatisfactory work performance, unless they've deliberately misled you that they've got better IT skills than they have when put into that role, I'm not sure that that's. I'm only throwing it out there that inadequate IT skills is more a matter of making sure people have the right training, isn't it? Oh, I'm missing the point.
Yeah, that's a good question. So thank you, Councillor Drake. And Chair, so I think you were along the right lines there, Councillor Drake, in the sense of what this is really about is we provide the opportunity for people to be upskilled. We recruit people with the right set of skills, or we put them through the training to get them to a certain level. But in particular around IT and the use of technology, we are continually evolving here. And there's an expectation that to a degree, all of our employees evolve with that. And so someone might have certain skills on an IT base at this point in time, but we're also expecting them to evolve them over time as well. So if, for example, someone didn't apply themselves into the training that was required, or didn't develop in a way that was appropriate, that's where that bullet point sort of linked into. So really.
Okay, it's just the way I read it, that was all. And on page 9.6, the town clerk will appoint an officer, usually the individual's line manager, to be an investigator, when in a lot of these instances, the line manager might themselves be involved. And I just wondered whether they were then acting as an independent investigator.
Yeah, Chair, again, it's a very good point. So the word usually is deliberately placed in there because ordinarily we would expect it to be the line manager. However, clearly, if there are reasons why that wouldn't be appropriate, then it wouldn't be the line manager in that instance. If they are clearly implicated or part of the complaint or the disciplinary itself. And just while I've got the floor, Chair, also within that section or that paragraph 6, the first line, sorry, the last line of the first paragraph is where there is the change from the current policy. So you'll see at the moment it now says that there'll be the town clerk as part of the panel plus at least one other member of CMT. So ideally there would always be at least 2 other members of CMT so that there's a panel of 3. However, we've kind of recognised partly where there's a streamlining of the CMT team in any case, but also that depending on certain timings, that might not always be possible. So to give you an example, last summer, one of the members of CMT was off for a period of time over the summer for a medical procedure. So that would have then left 4 members of CMT. One of them was the investigator, so couldn't be part of it. And so we essentially, the long and short is there's periods of the time where we can't actually have 3 members of CMT on it. We would always strive to have that, but the tweak to at least one other member so that it makes 2 just gives us that flexibility in that scenario. So that's what I'd explain that change.
Thanks, John. Anybody? Yeah.
A couple of just minor points, just points on wording. If you go to page 7, the 5th bullet point, in the second line, talks about suspension, but only for such time, will be on full pay and only such time as is necessary. I think it may be helpful to say who would determine that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, to answer that, to give you the answer, so the determination of that would be the town clerk in the first instance, the suspension. And if it's useful to do so, I think we will add a line in here if the committee would like to that just sets that out specifically. The line would say something like that. That would be a decision taken by the town clerk or their designated officer, which just gives me the opportunity to designate that to somebody else. So it's how we operate in practice, but I think Councillor Timmins, it would be a really good addition actually to clarify that. And the point about suspension not being a sanction in itself is really important, because at times suspension suggests that wrongdoing, or actually often suspension is a tool to be able to investigate properly in these scenarios.
Yeah, just couple others as well on the following bullet point 6 about mediation. It can be implemented at any stage. I'm just curious to see how that could impact the disciplinary procedure in itself. If somebody, I could imagine, being accused of misconduct might immediately call for that. It could delay the process. How would it fit in? Would it run concurrently with the disciplinary procedure? And perhaps maybe an implementation or the option to have mediation after a defined stage, such as stage in item 11. Sorry, on 14. Sorry, yeah. Or at least sort of, I'm thinking if a mediation was commenced, how it would affect the procedure.
Is it concurrent or not?
Yes. Yeah, so it's a good point. So ordinarily mediation would mean a kind of if mediation was to be started during the process of disciplinary, i.e. you've already gone to that stage of investigation, you would ordinarily pause the proceedings in order to carry out the mediation to see whether the mediation was come to fruition, and then you may then or may not continue on with it. I think that the benefit of it, how it's written at the moment, is it gives maximum flexibility, because these sorts of matters can be very complicated. I'm sure you sort of appreciate, and at points in time there may be matters that arise or information or evidence that becomes apparent that means that a course or a direction you thought you were going on might not now be the best course, and so mediation might be the best option at that point in time. If we were in exempt business, I could give you some live examples of how we've used that in the past, how that flexibility enables us to use mediation in that way. So I think setting out a key point in time where that is the point for it probably loses some flexibility for us.
Yeah, okay. I'm just thinking if somebody, there is an accusation and they reach for this document, and maybe it's just looking for clarity from the employee's point of view as to what they can do, when, and how. And it does actually fit into the latter part of that, where we have mediation as a dispute resolution process that requires the council and employees' consent. Maybe some clarification of the process and the impact on the investigation.
Yeah, certainly, I appreciate the point without doubt. I think that is one of the key points to mediation. It is about having consent on both parties.
Yeah.
So from experience, sometimes things change. So at the start of these sorts of issues, you will always try to deal with them in an informal way. If you do trigger something more formal, at that point in time, some parties might be up for mediation and might not. So mediation may be ruled out, but as you go through it, sometimes individuals' views on mediation might change. So if you just design mediation in at one point and don't have the mechanism to kind of go back to it as an option, that's when it becomes a sort of more inflexible for us, if you like. So it will always be. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I think I accept that. I just thinking that just having, obviously from the council's point of view, they're very familiar with the process, but somebody who is facing this for the first time, wanting to know what their options are and how it might look, and maybe reading this, trying to put myself in the shoes of the person who might be the subject of a disciplinary procedure. I'm not sure I understand what's going to happen, how, when it comes to the mediation. Okay,
so perhaps we can have a think about that, Chair, to see how we might be able to design a sort of. I don't think we've got in here like a flow chart. Sometimes they're useful to set out the sort of the stages and the options. So if that's something that might be useful, you think, just to clarify it, we can have a look at that separately and add it in. I think it's a good point. I mean, we're always trying to tread a very, very careful line with this. So clearly we need to be in line with ACAS guidance, and this sort of policy follows that, to ensure that from an employee point of view, they're kind of got protection and there's certain standards. But also, actually, this document is really about the council as well. And that's where we try to design in as much flexibility for us as a body. But if that flow chart you think might be useful, we can perhaps design that in a way that shows how the stages work and where mediation is an option.
I think that would be very good.
I think flow charts are good because they can actually show quickly what words sometimes struggle to produce. So, it's a good idea. Any other points on this one, Kevin?
No, that's it.
Okay. So we've been asked to approve this policy. May I suggest that I ask you to approve it subject to those amendments that have been raised, and production of this flow chart just to enhance things. Is everybody happy
with the mediation? We're keeping it so that you can bring the mediation in at any point.
Yes,
that made a lot of sense to me.
I think my question's really related about clarity of the process, and I think the flow chart was suggested.
But then the fact that mediation can come in at any point, I think was a very good valid point.
So your point, Kevin, on who determines
Oh, yeah.
suspension. I
Yeah.
think that is, again, for the penalties.
Town council, that's an officer.
Everybody happy? Can I have a quick show of hands? Right, lovely. Thank you. Okay, moving on, town council development and training policy. Again, looked down initially, if there's anything you'd like to say on this one?
Nothing to point out, Chair. It's another policy for review.
Yeah, same way. Carl, any observations you'd like to make?
Yeah, Chair, if I may, just setting the context for this. So broadly in our part of the sector and indeed across most of the local government, there aren't any mandatory training requirements for councillors. And it's something that as a sector we've actually been pushing for some time, because we actually think it'd be very useful as a group of officers nationally to have some mandatory training, so that there is at least a baseline that councillors all receive the same level of information and basics. There is a piece of work still going on nationally, and there are some sounds that are coming out of government around this, around mandatory training. So we're going to kind of watch that really closely, and if there are some changes that are reflected at a national level, then we will bring this back to committee to ensure they're reflected in our own policy. So what we try to do locally is we try to have a kind of a mixed approach where we give all councillors the induction that hopefully covers a mix of the key legislative elements of the role, how the council works, but also touch upon the more the community focused stuff. And I know all of you have been through a kind of an induction process with me either recently or a couple of times over recent years. We then have a kind of set of what we kind of call recommended training offers that we really encourage town councillors to take up. But we are only ever encouraging. We don't have any kind of ability to mandate that they're taken up. And then we have kind of the third strand, which is really the flexible element, where we have councillors at different times saying, I'm really interested in this type of element of my role as a councillor. Is there any training? I found this course. Could I go on that? And so we've always been very open to that element as well as a council. So what this high level policy does is try to just capture those three types of things. But it's all within the context that there's no mandatory requirements to do so. So hopefully that's just a useful bit of context there, Chair.
Indeed. Anybody, any observations, anything from like to add? I think Carl and I touched briefly on this, and I think it would be useful for some external training, potentially looking at local government reorganisation, what that might mean. With town council having to take on more responsibilities. And I think there is an organisation out there called HAPTC, Harpenden Advisory, but they offer, Hertfordshire rather, they offer training for parish and town councillors, so it might be something that we could look at. But anything else anybody would like to comment on, or are you comfortable to approve this?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Right.
Do a quick show of hands.
Well, quick show of hands, yes, thanks, sorry. We're all happy, yeah, thank you. So moving on now to staff training and development policy. Yes, what I was trying to remember was Hertfordshire Association of Parish and Town Councillors. I get quite a lot of emails from them when I'm training, so. Sorry.
We'll do. We'll get those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're quite interesting. So staff training and development policy, okay. This seems, Dan, very thorough. Any observations, Dan?
Nothing to add from me.
Thank you. Carl, anything you'd like to put in the pot?
No, Chair, I don't think so. Thank you.
Anybody else like to comment on it? Okay. The one observation I had was that, again, looking at the way the town council offices of pools grow, it might perhaps be useful at some stage to look at what's offered by the Chartered Institute of Personal Development, which is the gold standard for both public and private sector. And organisations can get accreditation, but also individuals, and it does look good on a CV. But it's also very helpful across the whole spectrum of HR work. But it's something for the future. It was just an observation. Anybody, any other comments? No? Okay, then, would you be happy to approve this policy? There it comes, please. Thank you. Moving on then to dignity at work policy. Is it extremely good? Anyway, again, I'll give the floor to you first of all. Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah. Chair, yeah, the only thing I would say on this is this is a theme that is crucial to our local council award scheme submission. Dignity at work and civility has been a big work stream across the National Association of Local Councils and the Society of Local Council Clerks for some time. And off the back of that, there is this greater emphasis of having these types of policies now. I think we've always operated in a way that is set out in the policy, but actually setting this out, having it formally approved and refreshed, I think is a really useful exercise. And again, I think it's just another reflection of the importance we place on supporting our employees and making this a good workplace and a good place to be for our people who, as we know in any organisation, are crucial to success. So happy to take any questions or comments off the back of that.
And personally, I think it's great to see this kind of thing in writing and being so important to an organisation.
Yeah.
Is this a new document or is it an update of an existing?
It's an update, isn't it? Or is it?
Yeah. So what I would say is that it's probably a mix of the two. So
Okay.
this is probably a policy that was been sitting there for some time and was overdue a refresh. This version of it is kind of lifted from model documents and colleagues and councils elsewhere, and then amended so that it fits in with our policy. So, for example, the page 35, when it starts to talk about procedures, that's an area where we've had to tweak it to make sure that it's not in conflict with our disciplinary process. And actually, in many ways, it talks a lot about mediation there in this sort of setting. So there's a bit of historic policy merged together with model documents and then tweaked for Harpenden to make sure it's appropriate for us.
Any other comments or thoughts or questions? No. Then, so would you all be happy to approve this policy? Please. Thank you. That moves us to exempt business. Do we have any? So anything for anybody else? We've come to the end of the agenda.
No, nothing from me, Chair. Thank you. If you did want an update on some of the long-term absence, once you formally close the meeting, I can stay on and give you a couple of words on that.
Yeah, that would be useful. Okay. All right then. Well, thank you all. Let's close the meeting then. 3:05.